It's literally a broad spectrum of disabilities and illnesses that we can work with and help just rehabilitate you to live a quality life. We help people just basically do the activities of daily living, we call it, which are just things you do on a daily basis. And we help you with getting those things done when you have an injury, illness, disability that prevents you from doing those things how you regularly would.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the podcast Learniverse, a program designed to educate people on different topics and issues and will have diverse range of content for listeners. I'm your host Rohan Ahmed joining you from the studios of MTA International. And today we are joined by a wonderful guest in the studio. She is an occupational therapist and she is the founder of I Promise Rehab and Healthcare Center in the Gambia, and she is Doreen Ja. Welcome to the show, and it's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Occupational therapist is one of those professions misunderstood. And even when we look at here in the Gambia, people are not even familiar with the name of this profession. So, can you tell us what is an occupational therapist?
So occupational therapy overall is it's a holistic approach that we take, but we help people just basically do the activities of daily living, we call it, which are just things you do on a daily basis. And we help you with getting those things done when you have an injury, illness, disability that prevents you from doing those things how you regularly would. So basically, as far as dressing, feeding, toileting yourself, exercises, writing a check, just living your life how you would on a typical basis. That's just kind of what occupational therapy is taking the holistic approach, helping you live your life more to basically feed the needs that you have.
Yeah, that's great. This field is quite broad. And so, what kind of conditions can one benefit from through occupational therapy?
So we see diagnosis of many. We do stroke clients. We do traumatic brain injuries. There's kids with autism. We work with pain management. We work with mental illness, geriatrics, hip replacements, any joint replacements. It's literally a broad spectrum of disabilities and illnesses that we can work with and help just rehabilitate you to live a quality life.
You worked in the US and now you have decided to stay here in the Gambia with the purpose of helping the people of the country. So, what were some of your earlier challenges and what kind of clients you started working with?
So when I first came here in the US, I mainly worked with geriatrics in either an acute rehabilitation hospital or in a nursing home facility. So it was mainly stroke clients that we saw or ones that had traumatic brain injuries or hip replacements and knee replacements. Those were the main ones that we would work with. And I did that for about 7 to 8 years. Now, when I came to the Gambia, that was my focus. It was how can I help these geriatrics, rehabilitate them. I had visited a family member who had been being cared for by people in the home, and she had swelling, edema on her legs. And when I asked how they were managing it, they had shown me the massage they were doing, but didn't realize that they were doing it improperly. So with edema, you're supposed to massage closer to the heart, upwards towards the heart. And with her, they were pushing it down, causing more edema, but they didn't know. So when I realized that, I said, okay, there is a market for it here. And in the beginning, I started going to places and just hospitals and seeing what kind of clients were coming in. And stroke seemed to be a big thing that was occurring here. And I tried to take on those clients. I would go out and say, this is my services, but they still had no idea what it was. Right now, currently, the main thing here is physiotherapy. So that's their rehab here. And so to them, it's just exercise and massage will heal me. So when I came, I tried to explain the services I could provide. These are the things that I can do to help you rehabilitate, be able to do things again independently. But it wasn't being accepted as much as I thought it would be. I said, oh, this person's had a stroke. Maybe they would want them to be able to walk, talk, and get better. But it was kind of here, it's like, the elders, let them be comfortable. And it was a switch because in the US, even I've dealt with people in their mid to late 90s, and it's like, it's time for therapy, get up. They had therapy 3 hours a day. We don't take no for an answer. You're here for rehab. Let's get you back home. Whereas here, it's kind of, these are the elders. We want them comfortable. We don't want to stress them. So let them lie in bed. If they don't want to do it, don't cause pain. And so my specialty wasn't accepted much. So I kind of was a little bit I was I felt defeated in the beginning because I thought it was something that was needed that wasn't here, and then because it wasn't being accepted as much, I just said, okay, well, maybe this is not something I can do here. So I kind of put it to the side a bit, but I was still seeing all of these things out there. I was seeing the strokes happening, visiting the hospitals, and seeing how they were being treated, or things that weren't being done properly for them. And I knew that it was of use, but to them it was, how can I get them to understand the importance of it?
So, you spoke about the elderly people you were looking after, caring after. What about children? What kind of cases you approached initially here?
So definitely. So with occupational therapy, as we said, we work with adults, children. It's just like a broad spectrum of it. But I personally wanted to focus on adults. And then I knew someone here when I had explained what I did. They were from the US, so they kind of understood what occupational therapy was. And they was a director of a school. So when she heard of my services, she initially said, don't occupational therapists work with children? And that's kind of how it introduced me here to it. And I said, yes, we do. And so she started recommending people to me. Oh, I have this parent who has an autistic child, and they had occupational therapy back home or in the States or wherever they were from. Do you think you can work with them? And at first, I was very hesitant to take on kids because, as I said, my focus was to do elderly. So, as a favor to her, I started taking on a few clients here and there in their homes. So, I would see autistic kids in their home. And then she had a child in her school who had spina bifida. And she says, could you come and just evaluate him and see if there's anything you can help him and do for him? So I went to the school, I saw him and saw that there was things that we could work on, his fine motor skills, mobility, things like that. And so then I took on that child. And from there, it still was very minor. And I was, working with kids in their homes. I would go to daycares and see them in the classroom setting. And it was there that I started to notice the other kids that were around. And I was in the daycare for one child, but as I'm with him, I would notice that this child and that child, they're not doing this or that, the correct way, or their gait, their walking seems a little bit off, or the way they hold the pencil is off, or their speech, the way they feed themselves. So just being around them started to make me open my eyes to the need for children. I started an event business, and doing birthday parties and things like that made me see kids and see that that was a need that was here. So I started to ask around people, oh, what's going on, for the kids. And so that's kind of how I was introduced to children. So we work with children with autism, with spina bifida, cerebral palsy, learning disabilities. So it's really just any disability or special needs that a child has, we can do work with them.
Thank you. And you talked about the spina bifida, and unfortunately in the Gambia we don't have a proper data system. So, but when we look at US, it is reported that nearly every year 1,300 children are born with this condition. And when we look at UK, nearly 700 children every year are born with this condition. So how quick can one get diagnosed with this condition, and what should be the response of a parent?
So abroad, I can only speak from where I'm from, right, in the US. So I know a lot of these conditions, sometimes they can detect them when a child is still in the mom's womb. So there's blood tests, there's ultrasounds, scans and things that they do to determine if a child will be born with this disability. Now here, there aren't those things. So as far as the US, you can prepare. As the child is still, developing, you can have a plan for when they're born. The doctors, nurses, they already know what they need to do, the steps they need to take right as the child comes out, and then moving forward as the child is growing and developing, the services and help that they will need as they're growing. Now, as for here, this is what the struggle is they don't have the tools to give these diagnoses, or they just don't know how to give, or they don't know much about the diagnosis in itself, right? So if even doctors don't know what these things are, how can they diagnose a child? So even if they don't have the technology, the machinery and things like that to diagnose them in utero when they're born, then how can they diagnose them if they don't know about it? So this is what has been my main struggle with the clients I have currently, especially the autistic clients, is there's no diagnosis here. The doctors, the parents are going in saying something's up with my child. I know something's different. They're not doing this, they're not doing that, or they're doing this way, and it's not normal to them. And they're looking for help and answers. And doctors aren't able to give them these answers. Or even if a doctor knows about autism, the thing was they had no place to send them. There was no resources for them. So even if I say, okay, your child is exhibiting signs or symptoms of autism, but where do you send them? What help can they get? So that's kind of what the issue is here.
So then now you have a well-established institution by the name I Promise Rehab and Healthcare Center. So what kind of clients you are having at the moment there?
Okay, so I will take on any client. So the center is for every skill that I have. So I would advertise that I can treat stroke and pain management and kids with autism, spina bifida, cerebral palsy, any disability. But the main clients that we are seeing in the center currently are kids with autism. We do have a few that have cerebral palsy, and I have one that has spina bifida, but all the rest of them are autistic children. It's about 90% of my client list are autistic kids.
Okay. So but it is very unfortunate that most of the time the parents they undermine these conditions. So and that is possibly because they are uneducated about it. So what are the steps taken by you to create awareness about it?
So, as you said, parents are uneducated. It's not just parents, the community, the doctors, everyone they don't know much about these things. So, I'm just trying to start with educating. Education and knowledge is very important on these topics, because the more you just tell people about what it is, the more that people can be able to say, okay, I see this. Now, this is what you should go ask for. You should go mention this word and then see, what they say if they believe this. So with me currently, before I started the center, as I said, I was working in the homes. And it was me working in the homes and traveling all over the place that I realized I can't do this for long, right? I can't, the traffic is not feasible. I can spend 3 hours and then I could be seeing clients if I had a space. So that's how the center came about. It was a space that people can come and I can get the most out of my time and see as many kids as I can. So when I started the center, a week after I opened the center, I did a conference, an awareness conference. And it was put together, really briefly. And it was a free event where I was just trying to educate the community on exactly, it was a disability and autism awareness conference. And I just wanted to start the conversation of what a disability is. People know disabilities, but they just think maybe one thing is it just someone in a wheelchair is a disability, or so just educating them on what a disability really is and the things to look out for and the different disabilities that are out there, and then as well as educate them on what autism is, because it was something that I saw so much here. So when we did the conference, I had speakers there. So the idea was not to just me speak from my point of view, but to really get an understanding from different areas. So I had educators speaking from a school standpoint on what the school has to deal with lack of resources. So when they have children with special needs and they don't have the resources they need, how does it affect the school and the child? I had parents speaking from just being a special needs parent and the struggles and hardship that they face being a caregiver. I had organizations speaking on how they help and manage kids with special needs. I had specialists, myself speaking on the work that I've done working with kids with special needs. We had actual disabled people coming to speak on the struggles they face as a disabled person in the country. And it was just an open discussion on us sharing our knowledge with people. It was nice because I invited people, even children, to come, and people brought kids with autism and different disabilities. And as we were speaking and showing videos and speaking on the signs and symptoms, they were firsthand able to see these things from the kids that were there. So it was kind of nice to put two and two together, right? And say, oh, she's saying this, and now I can see this. And the phone calls I would get after the conference were amazing. It was, the conference opened my eyes to help me realize that I had family members that showed signs of these things, and we had to send them back abroad because we had no idea of what it was. Or culturally here, the ideas of people that are different and that are not normal or typical, as we call them, and what their perception of those things are. If you're not a typical person, the things that they say that is wrong with you, or it's either that you're possessed with jinns and things like that, or and this is stories I'm hearing from parents and people here in the community, or that you're a bad parent because you didn't pay enough attention to your child, or you're sitting your child in front of a television and things like that. And they don't get that it's more than those things. There's an actual medical thing behind it. So being able to explain those things to people and have them see that there's a real cause to it and not blame themselves or think that they did something wrong as a parent was very impactful. Don't think that every child with autism is the same. They're individuals. We treat them as individuals, and we look at overall their difficulties and things that they struggle with or things that they're delayed in to be able to give them that proper diagnosis. There's no specific cause. Based on research and things like that, because autism is such a broad spectrum, it's hard to distinguish or measure what causes this.